So my name's Gillis, McCloskey, Councilman District A. I'm sitting here with Trent Moss, who is in the insurance. Well, I guess he is the attorney who combats the insurance companies on a daily basis on behalf of claimants. So we felt that this was appropriate conversation to bring at this time, and we'd just like to ask you a few questions and get your feedback on how our residents can protect themselves and, make themselves whole at the end of this thing.
Absolutely, Gillis, and I'm honored to be here, and I really do appreciate the opportunity to be able to not only give information to you, but also to the residents of St. Bernard Parish, which of course is my home. This devastating event has been terrible for all of us. It's been this ordeal. The only shining light or silver lining we've seen outside of this is the community really coming together, and I'm happy to be here to do my part and giving back what I can.
So did you, what made you decide to move to Arabi? I have to ask, because I've been selling Arabi for a long time, so I guess we'll just kind of take that as an aside.
Absolutely. A good friend of mine I used to work with, Tiffany Christian, moved to Arabi, I want to say in 2015 or thereabouts, and it was right at the launch of the St. Claude Heights rebuilding, right? And she had one of the very first new houses over there, and she would go to Spain every summer for a month. To be with her companion, and that's where he's from. And whenever she would do that, I would house sit for her. When I'd go down to Arabi to house sit for her and watch her little dogs, I just fell in love with the place, man. It was so beautiful. I ended up buying my own home in 2017 in Arabi, and I've never looked back since. It's definitely become home.
It gets under your nails, doesn't it?
It does. And I'm a small town boy. I'm from Abbeville, Louisiana.
Gotcha.
I'm from Vermilion Parish. I mean, it rubs me in all the right places.
Yeah, it's in my opinion the greatest place on the planet to live. I'm so happy to be from here. I'm raising the fourth generation here, and this disaster struck right at the epicenter of our growth in St. Bernard Parish. So that's heart-wrenching, and it has been heartwarming to see the community come together in the way that they have. It's really been something special. Even the volunteers that are here from out of state are like, you guys are something different, and we are, right? So I want to get into a couple topics that you and I have discussed briefly regarding specifically how people can be, how there's maybe a predatory element to some of these things that take place after the storm. So maybe you can talk about some of the things that you've experienced.
Yeah, sure. So I've been hearing a lot of reports in the neighborhood, which of course is my neighborhood, of people knocking on doors, offering free tarp services in exchange for signing a contract. And that contract has no dollar value ascribed to it. It essentially says that you're agreeing that this company will be allowed to make all repairs to your property for an undisclosed amount in exchange for you getting this free tarp. Now, I don't know how free you want to call that, because in the long run, you don't know how much you're going to be paying these people, whether or not you're going to be recovering that much from your insurance company, and whether or not you're going to be able to pay them at all. At the end of the day, you may find yourself, on the defense side of a lawsuit, which is the last place you want to find yourself, especially when you're trying to recover from a disaster. That is probably the most egregious thing that I've heard coming out of this particular disaster.
I want to make a distinction that's targeted specifically at that. So
Sure.
We have volunteer groups, faith-based volunteer groups and otherwise, working with parish government as a coordinated effort to do blue roofs, do debris removal, and tarping on houses and helping people secure their homes. These organizations are not asking for anything but permission to be on their property, and that should be very clearly written and stated in their one-page document that doesn't have very much writing on it at all. There's no request for a contract or anything like that. There's no requisite business after the fact. It's literally just a right to work on your home, you as the homeowner. With that said, please make that distinction. If there's an ask for future business that is not the same groups that we're working with, that we're sponsoring, these groups have been nothing but a godsend. They've come down here and they've basically just gotten to work. And a large part of the reason that we've been able to get as far as we have come is due to these volunteers and their willingness to coordinate with each other and with parish government. And our administration has been on point with with any requests from or to those groups. So just make sure you're heady about these conversations, and I know that that's hard to be sometimes when you're under duress in the way that all of those who are affected by this disaster are. So just pay attention. There is no gotcha in the people that we're working with. If somebody comes and says, we're going to sign a contract with you to do the work on your home after the fact, but for putting this blue roof on, that has got nothing to do with anything parish government has set up. None of our groups would do that, nor are they authorized.
Absolutely, and I'm certainly not talking about any of those groups. I know we do have a lot of great community groups that are out here, local and from abroad, as you had said. That's not what I'm saying at all. And I'm not even saying that signing one of these contracts, like I mentioned, was necessarily not in your best interest, but it's something you do need to look at very closely.
It certainly couldn't be, right? And it's really early in the game to be signing a contract for rebuilding your home. I want to utilize exactly that to segue into the next part of our conversation, which is what should these homeowners be preparing for, and how can they best protect themselves in this, navigating the waters with their insurance companies?
The most important thing that a homeowner can do, or a business owner for that matter, is understand what's in their insurance policy. We're all guilty of it. We have these big policies. They're long, they're hard to read, but they contain the framework for how we make insurance claims, what's covered, what's not covered, and it's our duty to read them under the law, and it's our duty to understand them, so we're bound by them. So it's very important that we understand these. Now, telling someone, hey, go read your insurance policy might come off as, well, that's not enough. But really, it is going to be the first and most important thing that you can do in trying to understand how to handle these claims.
Can you do me a favor and talk for a second about the trickiness of exclusions and how important those are to the policy and where those are found?
Sure. So you're going to find exclusions throughout the policy. And a lot of times what you'll see is in the beginning of your policy, in the earlier parts, you'll see a declaration page, and that's going to have certain coverages listed. And based on the declaration page, you're going to assume where it says dwelling X number that you're going to be entitled to that. But later in the policy, you're going to see, well, this is excluded or that's excluded. Whether or not it's a broken pipe, or whether or not it's it's not a wind-created opening. And I know not a wind-created opening might not exactly strike home on this particular loss, but that's just an example that I'm giving. There's a lot of exclusions that could apply, right? So you need to be aware of those. And even if you have exclusions in your policy that you do come across, don't take them as gospel, because you may have a change even later in your policy, these policy amendments. And a lot of times those are in the very back of the policy. So you'll have 1, 2, 3 things that are contradicting each other in the policy, sometimes more, right? So it's very important that you read it, not just the beginning, but all the way through.
So would it be your estimation that it is? Well, let me just stop right there for 1 second and ask you to just explain an exclusion and what it means, right? Because as I understand it in a very parochial way, is that it is exactly what it sounds like, in that it's an exception to the policy, right? So it's a but-for scenario in that, we'll cover you unless it falls into this box, right? And those boxes can be tricky.
Right. So there's a lot of things that can be considered exclusions, right? So let's take a dwelling loss, for example, where a pipe bursts in your house. Now, that pipe leaks, and it damages the floors, it damages the baseboards, it damages the walls, right? Now, there may be a policy exclusion that says, hey, we don't cover busted pipes. But the damages that occurred because of that busted pipe will likely still be covered. So it's important not only to understand that you have that exclusion, but what that exclusion means.
Right.
Because even though you have that damage that's not covered, a result of that incident would still be covered. So
interpretation of the language in your policy is an important part of this conversation, you would say?
100%.
The Insurance Commissioner Donnelly's office has sent 2 representatives to St. Bernard Parish to see us through the duration of this event. They are located at the Louisiana Workforce Commission's Mobile Command Center at Patricia Park, offering specifically that type of interpretation help. They're also offering, if you are having trouble with your insurance company getting an adjuster down here, if they extend beyond their term, which I believe in this situation it's 14 days, and in some scenarios it's 30, right? That's all within the state law. Commissioner Donnelly's office has agreed to see to it that our residents do not experience some of the tragedies that occurred from an insurance perspective during Laura and Ida. So we have that bat, so to speak, here at our disposal, and I've witnessed the first few screenings with our residents, and I felt like those went really well. The resident left with a better understanding of their policy, and furthermore, they went as far as to follow up and call the adjuster that was scheduled and said, hey, just letting you know, this is Commissioner Donnelly's office. We're here. You should make your appointment on Wednesday. So that was helpful, I thought, and I don't necessarily know if it's going to, I don't know what fruit it's going to bear, but we're hopeful that it will bear. Word will get around to the insurance companies that, hey, the guy that can find us is on site, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, and we're very grateful as a community that the commissioner has sent resources down here for people to use, and we really hope people do utilize them, because as I said before, it is very important that you understand your policy. Make sure you utilize every resource that's available to you, and not only do we appreciate Mr. Donnelly's sending of troops, so to say, down here to help people out with their policies, but also making it very clear that we need swift action here, because we do, because people are suffering.
So let's talk for a second about the definition of a settlement check and what that actually means, and how our residents should interpret that. I'll let you use your words because they're more informed than mine.
No, absolutely, and I guess let's take it one step back from there, right? So after your property is inspected by an insurance adjuster, there are several things that can happen, right? An insurance company can issue you a denial letter saying that your loss is not covered, at which point you would need to either ask for a reinspection or ask them to reconsider coverage or seek an independent evaluation, right? Or they could max out your policy and give you policy limits, which it does happen from time to time. But by far and away, the more and most common thing that happens is you're going to be issued one or more checks, right? They're called unconditional tenders. It's a little confusing because sometimes they send these things out and they say settlement value of X, settlement value of X. So it may say, $200,000 settlement for the dwelling loss and $100,000 settlement for the contents loss. This is not like settling a lawsuit where this is the end of the road. These are, again, unconditional tenders. What that means when I say unconditional tender, it means that this is a payment that's made without admitting a resolution of the claim. Mm-hmm. The claim is not over. The claim is not closed. You can continue to pursue action on it at that point. So even though the insurance company has paid you something for this loss, you still have the right to seek more from them. If your contractor comes back and says it's going to cost more to fix it, he can send a proposal. You can have your own private adjuster or estimator go, whether it's a consultant or anyone else, go and value the loss, and you can submit that independent estimate to your insurance company for their consideration. You could also ask your insurance company to go back and reinspect the property or to reconsider their first inspection of the property. There's a lot of things you can do, but it's very, very, very important, and I can't stress it enough, that your claim is not over just because you received a check.
So, Trent, I've asked you to be on a board that's going to advise the long-term recovery after this, of this disaster. And what was the name that you guys came up with for that board?
I believe it was the Arabi Recovery Association.
Okay. That's not necessarily formal yet. This happened about 2 hours ago, so
that's right.
We don't want to stamp that yet, but it may be the case. But the purpose of the board is specifically to have people who are professionals and deal in construction and policy and insurance, so to speak, to inform our recovery process. And I want to personally thank you for being a part of that board, and thank you for the information that you're willing to give to our residents. And I expect that this is a much deeper and more detailed conversation. We're going to have to get some long-form content out to our residents to help them navigate this process. And I know that you'll be willing to help us with that. And I want to, put together some type of FAQ and, informational that we can provide to our residents, at least letting them know where the vipers are, right? That kind of thing. And I thank you so much for being here. I guess on one last note, if we could discuss, are there any differences in, say, a business policy versus a residential policy, seeing as how the Chamber of Commerce is sponsoring this podcast? What's your experience with that, and if you can give advice specifically to businesses, and if that advice would vary any from what we've discussed so far?
Yeah, absolutely. And there are differences in business policies and residential policies. There's differences in all policies. So even if you look at one residential to the next or one commercial to the next, but the main thing that a commercial policy needs to look for at this point as a business is going to be business interruption, right? So when we have these businesses that have been affected, and I can think of a few of them down,
So can I, for sure.
Yeah, that have really been devastated.
Yep.
They're not going to be able to carry on their business in the way they were before.
Sure.
So you have to consider, how is this impacting you economically? So you have to look at your profit and loss statements. You have to demonstrate how much loss you're actually incurring. And this is going to be a separate coverage. And it's going to be one of the most important ones, or one of the more important ones, for your commercial losses. Now, that are going to be different, obviously, from the typical, the building is damaged, the stuff inside is damaged.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for that information. Is there anything else you wanted to offer to the residents before we break away?
I mean, at this point, it's just very important to document your damages. If you haven't done so already, please take as many photographs as possible. Take photographs of the building, take photographs of your contents. Wherever you are, make sure you're documenting how much additional living expenses is the term they use in insurance policies that you're incurring. How much you're paying in your rent right now. If you're staying with family, are you contributing to the food supply in the house? How are you contributing monetarily to where you're staying? You need to document all these, because these are covered losses. Most people think of additional living expenses under an insurance policy and they think it's a hotel bill, but it's anything that you incur as a result of your displacement. So it's important that you document that. And one of the most difficult things to do right now for a lot of these people is going to be documenting their contents loss. So please start doing it now. I know it's going to be hard. You need to make sure that everything that was lost or damaged in the house, you have a description of it, you know about how old it was, and you know about how much it costs. To the extent you can, document it with photographs, receipts, but very important that we get these lists together and document your damages. I mean, that's the most important thing you can do.
Oh, look, I want to personally say thank you for choosing to be sold on St. Bernard, and I want to let you know how happy we are that you are part of our community. We thank you for your help and your service in this way. We're going to be working to get some more information out to the residents, and we look forward to you helping us inform them.
Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you.